Welcome back to the channel, everyone. In this video we are mocking up some suspension. If you're new to the channel or first time checking out this build, this is a 1/16 four-wheel drive truck from Bezgar. It's marketed as an off-road vehicle. It works pretty well off-road, but in my testing with it, I actually found that it was really fun to drive on-road, kind of sling it around, bash it around on the street. So I'm turning it into a F1 style street bash build. We've gone ahead and 3D printed some F1 style wheels with the Tamiya tires, and now we're focusing on the suspension. In the front, we got rid of those big shocks, and we're going for a cantilever style suspension. That way I could lay the shocks down up on the chassis here, get them out the way up front. The original plan was to use 1/16 Mini E-Revo shocks, but I didn't have enough room there, so instead I found these little guys. These are actually for the Losi Micro four-wheel drive trucks, the Rally, the Truggy, stuff like that. But they're the perfect size to lay down up here, used for my suspension. We took the original shock tower off with the shocks, and we got some parts that are coming off the printer as we speak. Let's get these things installed and we can see how this works. This is what I'm calling my new bulkhead piece. This replaces the original shock tower. It bolts into the same locations and also lets us put the hinge pins back in the original places for the upper control arms. This was pretty difficult to design to make sure this all worked correctly. Part of the back and forth of designing, but we got it done now and that works really well. Next up is the rear mount for these shocks. This is gonna bolt through some original bolt holes here on the chassis. Gonna slide in like this, and we're using 2 cap head screws that I had lying around to hold that in place. Rolling along, we'll install our rocker arms next. I designed these rocker arms for the shock to pass through the top end. It'll fit 2 bearings. The screw will encapsulate those 2 bearings, and then you'll see what happens with the push rod in a minute. Next up would be installing the shocks, but before we could install them, we have to fill them with oil. It is really difficult and kind of interesting to see, especially at this scale, that these shocks are actually capable of being oil filled. You can see there's a O-ring inside there, and we actually have a bladder in the cap of the shock. Looks like just one little piston in there with a little slot on the side of it to let our oil pass through. I'm gonna go with some 50 weight oil. Being that this is an on-road build, don't want anything too soft, but I also don't want to go too stiff because of how small these shocks are. All right, we got some filled up shocks here. Now it's time to install them, making sure to put the little bushings in place. We're using these absolutely tiny SCX 24 screws. And then again, another bushing. It was probably smarter to install these in the arms first and then on to the mount in the back. All right, that's a little better. You can see that looks like it's gonna work pretty well. Let's get the other one installed and then we can worry about those push rods. So that's looking pretty nice. Now we can go ahead and tie these lower arms into our rocker arms. We're gonna use a push rod for that. These might look a little familiar too. These are from the SCX 24 as well. On the bottom, being that they have to screw into the original A-arm, we won't be using a pivot ball. It'll just go straight through the hole. You can see there's a little play, but it's not a whole lot. Up top, we have us a metal pivot ball. I believe these are stainless. And another one of those SCX 24 screws. And we can thread that into our rocker arm. Might have to shorten this screw a bit. And just like that, and with a quick spring swap, we have a working cantilever suspension. The rocker arms work pretty well. I'm pretty happy with all of this design. I think we're gonna end up reprinting this rear mount for sure. Nothing wrong with it. The print just didn't come out the greatest. Besides that, I think we need to wait to do any tinkering till we get the rear figured out so we can see how the suspension really works. You can maybe see we have a bit of a mess here because I did take the rear apart already to start designing that. This one may be a little easier to design because the mounts are perpendicular to the ground. Everything should be pretty straight and true. This front one was at some different angles, so it was kind of fun. I will be attempting that Agama N1 rear suspension like I mentioned in the previous videos, using some lay-down shocks. I believe these shocks are going to be a little too small for what I want to do, so we'll probably use the Mini E-Revo shocks in the rear here, but that'll be in its own video. For now, just pretty excited to finally get this front suspension done. You can see it'll be pretty nice sitting up underneath that body. That ought to look pretty sweet. That's it for this video though. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you enjoy these little, what I call engineering videos, where I get to design and actually test out some of these practical parts. I'm a bit of a suspension buff. I love messing with suspension. So these videos are really fun for me. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoy them as well, because the rear suspension will be coming soon. I hope you guys are excited to see that one as well. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos on this build. And as always, thanks again for watching. Peace.